Welcome to this week's lecture on forecasting, scenarios and systems. This is going to be slightly different from the previous two lectures you've had, which are mostly about me talking, in that for some of the systems and some of the ideas we'll be looking at, and this will be true going forward, there are some quite high quality professional videos out there, so I'm using those to supplement or even to replace some of my own speaking or working, and we can discuss them further in class. So why are we talking about? What are our objectives for today? Well, there are different ways of making forecasts, and we're going to look at a number of them. And I hope that from them you can gain some understanding of how different approaches and some of the strengths and weaknesses of these various approaches. There is also a debate between Stratfor, which is an American strategic objectives website in which people discuss scenario thinking, which is Stratfor's main way of working, and the idea of forecasting and compare them. As well today, we want you to understand the nature of systems and systems thinking, which is very important in developing strategy. It comes from engineering, but is very helpful in understanding the way that strategies go. And introduce you to also a tool called Rich Pictures, where you can actually draw up the ideas and try and help you to actually see an image in your mind what is going on. So having identified the systems, you'll need to be able to work out which of these key areas of the system are impacted by the forecasts. And finally, we'll look at the development of scenarios. And scenario planning is a major part of your learning here. All the other things you learn are taken into scenario planning, because scenarios will use all the techniques that you are going to develop for strategic planning to develop scenarios, and then for scenarios you develop strategies. That's the key way we're looking at it. So you must understand the interaction between all of these things, the forecasts and the systems, and how they can be help the development of scenarios. So, what are we talking about with forecasting? Important to recognize as a panel approach. A panel approach is simply a system where we get a group of people together to discuss things. Look at the Delphic method. Delphic method that we have got a video on because it's a bit more intense, a bit more in depth, and the video is hopefully quite clear and explains it. Structured analogies, which is an important topic. I'll look at those a bit later on. And I'm going to introduce predictive markets. I've put a video in about predictive markets. Because of the nature of predictive markets, we can't really use them in the course. But I think it's important that you understand them and you see them and hear about them and realise that in many ways they are potentially the way forward. They're very common used in Google. They're also believed to be used by people such as the CIA and the US government in order to make future predictions. A couple of things. What is a panel method? Well, a panel is something similar to Match the Day. If you've ever watched a sporting program, and you'll see people actually sitting around discussing the potential results of the game, what they think were going to happen, that is a panel method. It's like I say, it's similar to the Match of the Day. It's similar to most of a sports program. Effectively, it's a group of experts discussing, deciding what is likely to happen. They have a long discussion. They try and come up with their opinions. The strange thing about them is that they are very poor, even though they're extremely common. You see them in politics, you see them in sport, you see them in economics, you see them in finance, you see them everywhere. But they have a very poor record. They are extremely prone to groupthink. And one of the areas that have been particularly bad has been in investment decisions. They underperform the market by at least 1 to 2%. This is important because actually most of your investments, if you own mutual funds or pension funds, etc., are managed in this manner. And yet they actually failed that. In reality, is the 1 or 2% they underperform in the market is the fees they charge. They actually tend to perform on the average of the market. Certainly over any period longer than 10 years, there's very little evidence that anyone really can fundamentally outperform the market. Other method I want to consider is structured analogies. Now, structured analogies have 4 primary things to doing. The structured analogy, first thing you must do is describe the target situation. So you must prepare an accurate, comprehensive, brief description. To do so, the administrator might seek advice from unbiased experts, from experts with opposing biases. Where feasible, include a list of possible outcomes for the target situation following the description. Doing so will make coding it easier. It also makes it possible to ensure forecasts are relevant to the user. Having described the situation, you look for or you identify and describe analogies. Recruit experts who are likely to know about situations that's similar to a target situation. The number of experts depends upon the knowledge that they have about analogous situations, variability of response across experts, and the importance of having an accurate forecast. Drawing upon the research on the number of forecasts needed when combining, we suggest using at least 5 experts. Ask the experts to describe as many analogies as they can without worrying about the extent of the similarities. Then ask the experts to match the analogy outcomes with target outcomes. The next stage is to actually work out how similar these are, so rate the similarities. Once the situations have been described, ask the experts to list similarities and differences between the analogies and the target situation. Then they should rate the similarity of their analogies to the target on the basis of this analysis. And finally, derive your forecast. To promote logical consistency, use predetermined rules to derive a forecast from experts' analogies information. This also aids replicability. You will not have a real chance to bring experts in, but you certainly will have an opportunity to build up analogies. One of the things you may want to look at historically, is what happened when the first wave of imperialism happened in Africa. What happened around the turn of the century? What happened around 1910, 1914, 1915? See, what can you learn from that to help you balance your outcomes and the way you're going to behave? Techniques I mentioned, I think that actually there are other better videos than the ones that I can produce. So I've included them on the VLE, and I think you should watch them now. After watching them, then there is a video on strategic planning, on scenario planning, and I think this is very important. There are some more notes on scenario planning in the handout that I've given you, and we'll have a good discussion of this in the next class before going on to have a go at some scenario planning and some forecasting and some systems thinking on the Friday. Once you've looked at the scenario planning film, and once you've looked at the film, which is a debate between scenario planners and forecasters, go on to part B of this lecture, systems thinking.